Hello everyone, my name is John Michael Bushman and welcome back to Vanguard. A year ago, I started my journey in CardFight Vanguard and it has been quite the ride ever since then. I sadly don't get to play this game too often, but the times that I do get to play it, I enjoy the living crap out of it. But as is the nature of card games, especially the ones that are produced in Asia, power creep can be a bitch. And a build that I had way back when was almost immediately power crept out of the format. And Bushiro does trickle support down for this archetype every now and again. Like this card right here came out of an entirely different set, that apart from the massive wave of support that came out in the 11th set in this current season. This archetype was sadly struggling a lot, and mainly due to the fact that, well, I will explain later. So there is that. Now, the updates to this deck was honestly insane, and it turned this deck from a subpar mid-range deck to now a proper tempo deck. Although the big thing about this is that, well, if you face off against a deck, and there are decks nowadays that exist that play tokens, you're basically dead in the water. The prison doesn't exactly treat tokens as if they exist. The ones that you can only put in the prison are normal units. I'm gonna go over the new cards and the changes to some of the ratios that happened since then, and we're gonna start off with the ride line. Nothing changed with Ruby. She's still Ruby, but she does get a new uniform and a new look, so definitely good on her there. You did good, girl. You did good. And the biggest change here is Kyanite Cobalt. She has changed, and she even has a playmat. I don't know why they gave her the playmat and not the grade 3, but I guess, I mean, she's hot. No denying that she's hot in her own right, but I guess the tomboys get their due. Her skill is when she is placed on the Vanguard circle, you reveal a grade 3 card with Seraph in its card name from the right deck. So basically, once you start the game, the grade 3 will be face up until like she is called onto the field. So there's that. Then you search your deck or hand for Galactolus, and then you put it in the order zone. So you no longer put it in your hand. It goes straight into the order zone. And then if you put it from your hand, you will draw one card. So even replace the card that you lost if and only if the order ends up in your hand, which is a huge improvement from the prison that you ran previously. And speaking of the prison, which is already a huge improvement, you don't need to soul charge anymore when it's put into play. And what it would do instead is, if your opponent calls from the prison, you will instead soul charge, which gives fuel to the grade 3, which is insane. And there's now synergies on top of synergies in this deck, compared to, just singular units just doing their thing way back when. And by way back when, just last year. So there is that. We move on to the new grade 2, the upgrade Risat Peach. When she's placed on the Vanguard circle, you will reveal the Seraph, and then you Soul Blast 1. So never forget that. I tend to forget that because, new card and whatnot. And then you will draw a card on top of imprisoning a card from their hand. So this is a huge improvement over what Rasat Peach used to be able to do, to even draw one card and then to Soul Blast. So if in case you soul charged something important into this prison, she will recoup your loss by making you draw a card. So hurrah for that. And then of course the final one, the final piece, I even have her in her most expensive form. The Light of Justice shines universally. I call to the Vanguard circle Seraph Clear Lights, and oh boy, her effects are amazing. Once per turn, you Soul Blast 1, and then you just imprison a rear guard. No fuss, no muss. But if you choose not to do that, you can instead imprison from their drop instead. So you basically have a choice, and it's insane. Then if she is on the Vanguard or rear guard circle, so keep that in mind. And you're gonna know why I have 3 more copies in the main deck. She will get her usual buffs. She gets plus 10k attack and then drive plus 1, and then if she is on the rearguard circle, sadly, she will go to Soul. So, she is a win con in and of herself, and it's a huge improvement over just relying on turboing out Seraph Pure Light. And It's insane, and this is why you can choose to have three copies of the grade 3 in your main deck, and you can even persona ride now, and it will grant even more attack power to your deck. And last but not least, her last ability, if you soul blast, so basically if you use her first ability until the end of your opponent's turn, they whenever they would call from the prison, they will not activate their on play abilities, which is insane board control, and it can shut down some strategies entirely. And it's insane how good the new support is. Is it tier 1? Yeah, probably not. Unfortunately, there are decks that can definitely still ruffle stomp the fuck out of prison, and it's sad, but hey, that's just the nature of card games. Moving right along to the main deck, a lot has changed with the ratios around these parts, and we're gonna start off with the big boss monster herself, the mommy herself, Seraph Pure Light. She has been reduced down to 2 copies. Why? Because you can just run three and two, just 5 win cons all in the deck. Seraph Pure Light was the former win con. You would try to turbo into it as fast as possible by using Security Upgrader. But now that Clear Light is in the picture, well, you don't really need to wholly rely on her. You will only try to get Pure Light if and only if you are sure that you're going to win that turn, or at the very least you are going to put your opponent in an extremely precarious position. So yeah, these two working in tandem with each other, they are more than enough to close out games more than ever, rather than just relying on Pure Light to do the heavy lifting. And then a new piece of support that came out of set 11, which is Flawless Lila, and if she's placed on the Vanguard circle, you will imprison from top. So pretty standard fare. And then if there are 2 or more cards that are in your prison, you will counterblast one and then you draw 1 card. So she basically replaces herself. And the biggest flaw that I found from this deck, and hell, even with the new wave of support, it unfortunately relies on your opponent taking actions. And if your opponent sadly does not play into it, well, you're basically just forced to attack with your. They're decently statted, but your opponent will likely have enough blocking power in hand to stop them from taking too much damage. So yeah, surprisingly flavorful that if your opponent is not exactly disturbing the peace, then they don't really need to do their work. So that will force you as the chief of police to just command your forces to attack a seemingly innocent bystander, so that you can hopefully get to your win condition. And in this essay, I will explain why police brutality is moving right along to the newer piece of support. Well, this is semi-recent now. We have Welt Kipple, which I unfortunately mispronounced by just replacing 1 letter there. She is the other unit that can use your energy, and this deck doesn't exactly use energy, so this is definitely an alternative to do that. And what Welt Kipple does is you energy blast 3, and then you just imprison from hand. Or if they do not imprison from their hand, you will imprison 2 cards from their drop instead, and that can sometimes win you games. And one thing that is common, I forget to mention, if there are a certain number of cards that are in your prison, a lot of cards in this deck get a plus 5,000 to their attack power. So keep that in mind as you play with this deck. And usually your numbers will average out at about 30 to 40, and then would cap out at about 50 in the late game. So keep that in mind. So that's all what Welt Kipple does. She either attacks the hand or attacks the drop, which is surprisingly common, at least at the time of me recording this video. I don't really need to explain too much about what Citrus does. She is the hidden boss monster of this deck, and maxing out on her is definitely warranted, and you will not have it any other way. The one of fun of Derry Violet, she is basically cheating because she acts as the 5th perfect guard in this deck. And you can have Elementaria as the other Sentinel here, which can block more than whatever Cosmo Wreath does, but I prefer to keep it like this, and it is serviceable, but it definitely needs more improvement. Again, you can add Elementaria here. You can even replace some of the other stuff that is in this deck, but these are the ratios that work for me, and I would prefer to show off what the girls can do as much as possible rather than add a lot, or rather add too much outside support. And then the other new card in this deck, we have Truncheon or Lane. These names. Although they are all based after, I believe they're all based after flowers, either flowers or fruits, because I have no idea what a well kibble is. So there is that. But definitely, corner citrus. Well, citrus in particular. It definitely has something to do with fruit there. Lila is either a flower. Actually, no, they're all based after flowers. Holy crap! Why did I not see that? Violet is a flower. Oh my god! Why did I not see that? Just had an epiphany right here, right now. But going back to Truncheon Orlane, she is basically the fifth to eighth copy of H0rny, which is probably not the flower, probably is, but I'll do my research off camera. But Orlane, you look at the top 7 when she's placed on the rear guard circle. Then you look for a Seraph. So she is also copies 5 to 8 of Security Upgrader. So there is also that. And that's basically all she does. And then if you reveal the card, you will discard a card, which, oh no, you would prefer to discard Seraph Purelight instead, because Security Upgrader only ever really gets the grade 4s. So keep that in mind. But otherwise, she is also a decent booster at that, because she gets +5 if there are a couple of cards in your prison. So she's a +13. And then, of course, H0rny. I mean, what more can I say? She is essential in this deck. It saddens me that Blitzstaff Muna had to get cut from this deck, but she's unfortunately a little too slow and doesn't exactly help with the game plan. She is more reactive than she is proactive. Then, of course, Security Upgrader. I mean, what more can I say? This robot gets the grade 4, and then you try to win from there. And then for the triggers, not much has changed. You still have Enpyro, which is a really good front trigger, although I'm mainly using him for the +5,000 defense, so he blocks for 20, which can help me survive a lot of the more aggressive matchups. And then, of course, Decker Cop, he can also be a booster, and he can also give a small increase to attack, but he's not exactly too necessary. You can replace him with other units instead, but I prefer him for flavor reasons because he is a cop car. And then, of course, the other triggers, Lurus Yellow, and then you have Truce Green, and then of course the one of fun of Overtrigger of Eldo Breath. So yeah, those are all of the upgrades that came with set 11 for this deck in CardFight Vanguard, and honestly, I am very, very happy with how this specific build turned out. My god, it is a lot smoother compared to what I was piloting just last year. So there is that. If you guys like what you saw, hit like, comment, subscribe, and share this among your friends. And until next time, Doodles.